I think there's decent reason to believe that the iPhone 12 is going to be another super cycle year. For those who don't know, super cycle means a bunch of people start upgrading their phones more so than usual, and sales do a lot better than average. And while we're just glancing at leaks and rumors right now, it may not feel like it's that big of an upgrade, but if we look at Apple's history when iPhone sales took off, I think it makes the most amount of sense that it's going to happen this year. And absolutely, could be wrong. I have a terrible track record. Keep that in mind moving forward. Why do you guys even watch these videos? Let's begin. So if we look back at some really popular iPhone designs, iPhones that kind of peaked in sales and got a lot of people upgrading to an iPhone for the first time or upgrading their older iPhone, it's when there were noticeable design changes, particularly when it comes to the front. So I make fun of people that judge iPhones based on this, but a lot of people legit think phones don't change if the front of them looks the same. I highly disagree with that claim because I think there's a whole lot of changes you can make to a phone just with the internals, just with the camera performance, the battery life, display quality, and there's all kinds of stuff that can improve a phone without really changing the fundamental look of the front. But things like the iPhone 4, which are still some people's favorite iPhone design of all time, was making the big shift from the curved edges, standard 3GS looking design up to something different and unique, and it instantly made everybody's iPhone feel dated that people ran out to Apple stores to pick up the new iPhone 4 because, I mean, internally, software-wise, was there a whole lot of changes with the iPhone 4? There were some, yeah, there were camera improvements, but for the most part, that design, I think, is definitely what drove people to go out and upgrade because it looked different, and it was a signature design choice that was fundamentally very different from what we had before. And I think Apple's about to do that again. As we know, lots of different leakers are confirming that the next generation iPhone for the entire iPhone 12 lineup is going to model off of the iPad Pro, going with a more squared off edge design, kind of resembling that of the iPhone 5, except of course now we're going to have all this more futuristic tech compared to the iPhone 5 or 4. We've got biometrics, we've got OLED displays across the entire lineup, and that's another big point that I think people might miss. See, the iPhone XR sold pretty well, as did the iPhone 11, and those had LCD liquid retina displays. They weren't really anything that fancy. They just had the bezel-less design. They looked like the iPhone X that was so expensive, but everybody loved it, but now you could get it in a more affordable package. So that signature, iconic, iPhone X design, which some would agree would be a super cycle, that's when a lot of people wanted to upgrade, that drove the sales of the next 3 years of iPhones. We still have that iconic look on our iPhone 11s today. I think in 2020, that iPhone design is finally going to be fundamentally changing. Knowing that there's a 5.4-inch iPhone, I feel like they have to do something with the notch. It doesn't have to be that major, and I don't think most people are going to upgrade simply because the notch is smaller, but it's much bigger picture than that. It's because the design is changing in an iconic and noticeable way. It's not just the bezels around the display getting thinner, though I do think that will help. There's new form factors, there's new footprints, and that squared off design is something that stands out because no iPhone in the lineup currently has that edged off design. And Apple has a way of marketing and taking pictures at just the right angle of their iPhones to make them desirable and really premium looking, just like they introduced the iPhone SE recently. And this, honestly, is kind of a really old classic design. There's not really much new here, but just because of how they're able to market the images and how they're able to promote the iPhone SE, it makes people go, dang, that thing looks kind of good. I think I want to pick one up. So imagine what the situation's going to be when we have the iPhone 12 Pro and the regular iPhone 12s with totally different designs, thinner bezels, smaller notch, squared off edges, and it just instantly makes all of our iPhones that we're rocking today suddenly feel outdated. Apple's very good at making people feel like you no longer have the latest, greatest thing. I also don't think it hurts that this is one of the first times we're getting a huge fundamental design shift, but at the same time, we're also getting a pretty major internal design shift. So in years prior, usually when we get huge CPU or GPU upgrades, it's in the S year, the year where they focus on speed and internal performance. Years like the iPhone 5S, when they initially switched to the 64-bit architecture. We got Touch ID on that iPhone, so it was a pretty solid upgrade overall, but design-wise, everything was, for the most part, the same. Now we're getting big new design and also big internal upgrades because the A14 chip is going to be the first 5nm CPU, which is not a standard thing in even flagship smartphones these days. Qualcomm is behind on that with the Snapdragon series, so we should expect pretty massive CPU and GPU upgrades, which could allow for some exclusive features to those phones as well. But it's kind of the perfect storm because we're going to get the nerds really excited with CPU and GPU tests, and we're also going to get the common folk excited with the squared off design and the new approach that's gonna make everyday people feel like, oh man, I gotta get that new iPhone that looks so clean and different now. And my old iPhone, I don't even want to look at this thing. So you're kind of attracting both audiences here, and because we normally don't get those giant speed improvements in the years that we get giant design improvements, like the iPhone 6 is a classic example of a super cycle. More people bought that iPhone within a single year than pretty much any other iPhone since then, because there were such massive design changes that year. But when it came to the new CPU, the A8 chip was not that big of an upgrade. So imagine if we got the massive A9 chip upgrade and we got the iPhone 6 in the same year, then you should probably expect something similar to the iPhone 12 lineup. And I know probably a lot of you are assuming because of the pandemic and the economic downturn, we may not expect sales to be as high at first, and that may absolutely be the case. I'm not ruling that out entirely, but a lot of Apple analysts are guessing that there's going to be quite a large economic rebound once things start going back to normal and once people start heading back to work. And we won't know for sure until these months come, but I still think that just from the marketing and the design changes alone, especially ones that are super noticeable, you know, the fact that you'll be able to recognize the iPhone 12 or 12 Pro from literally any angle. I mean, when I show you the front of the SE, there's really no way for you to know if this is an iPhone 6, 6S, 7, or 8, or SE, because the front of the design hasn't changed that much, which, again, in my opinion, doesn't make or break a phone, but it does bring out the masses when there is something noticeably different about the front. So the iPhone 12 comes out and it looks noticeably different from our iPhone 11s and 11 Pros. I think that's going to drive a lot of upgrades now that we're getting 6.7-inch displays and thinner bezels, squared off design. Literally from no angle will it look the same as last year's. So combine that with the CPU and GPU improvements, that's why I think there's a pretty decent chance that iPhone 12 and the 12 Pro will end up being a super cycle year where a lot of people end up upgrading, because they just gotta have the latest, greatest thing, you know? Don't underestimate the Apple sheep army. It's out there. But of course, I could be wrong. Feel free to hit me up over on Twitter, join my Discord, and we can chat more about it there. There's a lot of things we don't know about the future, but what we do know is we're gonna get at least one "don't buy the iPhone 12" video. Internet's incredibly predictable. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.